Welcome into another episode of Respect Her Game. I am your host, Laura Stickells, joined today by the amazing Annabelle Hasselbeck. We have a really exciting episode today. We're going to do a lot of Olympic trials talk. We're going to talk gym, soccer, the track trials, which is super exciting. Now, for those of you watching and you're wondering, Sophia will be out for a few weeks. She's getting some much well-deserved time off after a very long Bruins hockey season. So I'm excited to be filling in for the next couple of weeks. But also really excited to have AB here today. Now,
hi.
Great to see you. Now, for those of you who don't know, AB and I actually met a couple months ago when you shadowed me for a BC hockey game. I was doing the ringside reporting that game. And I remember I gave you some advice back then about kind of how to break into the industry. But ever since, I've just been so impressed following you on social media, all of the work you did for the BC Athletics Department. And now, like a couple months later, and you're sitting here at Nesson co-hosting a podcast with me. So just, I'm so impressed with everything that you've done to just launch your career to this point.
That is so sweet of you. But no, you were unbelievably kind to me. And it's just crazy how this ended up working out with us hosting the show together today. And the kindness that you showed me in the job shadow. I remember getting a text, I think it was the day before the BC versus Merrimack game. It's like, hey, would you want a job shadow this girl, Laura? I'm like, yes, 100%. And it was my first experience covering hockey, which you almost got taken out by one of the BC players when they were running back onto the ice. I don't know if you remember that. I was like,
I do.
Oh, like I might have to go in for Laura. This could get bad. But I learned so much just from you in that one day. But yeah, so cool how our paths crossed again.
Yeah, so just for some context on that, anybody that covers hockey, this is a tip. When you're walking through the tunnel before or after warm-ups, and the guys are coming off, you want to look both ways before you cross the street. Hockey players come flying down that tunnel
with blades.
Yeah,
like ice skate blades.
And I did look both ways, but almost got taken out anyway, so you never know what's going to happen covering hockey. But speaking of kind of media mayhem moments or just like chaos that happens during live broadcasts, you did your very first live broadcast a couple months ago with BC Baseball.
I did.
Tell me how that went.
BC Baseball, Bird Ball, as they like to be called. It was so fun and exciting. Definitely, I was very nervous, but having watched you with the Woo Sox kind of gave me that confidence. And yeah, I would definitely say my media mayhem moment, if we're going to call one out, was I stepped right up there and I got to do a mic check before the game, so I felt a little bit better. But the producer was like, okay, you'll stand right here next to the dugout. And I've watched baseball my whole life, but I never had that lens of, if I was a dugout reporter, like, where would I be? And so they positioned me right in front of the dugout. I'm like, right here? Like, you sure? I'm going to stand right here because they're all right behind me. They're going to hear me talking about them. And it was just a funny moment between the producer and the other staff and me, just my negligence to the situation. But yeah, it was really fun. And that moment that I was live, I think I said, hi, I'm here, Annabelle, I'm here at BC Baseball. And I was like, okay, calm down, you're good. And after that, it felt normal and I was rolling. But yeah, it was funny. I look back, my roommates, how did it go? Oh, well, I did say I was at BC Baseball right in front of the baseball bench where clearly the team was. So learning moments, but yeah, it was really exciting and nice to see you teach me some of those live hit skills at that BC versus Merrimack hockey game.
I remember the first live broadcast I ever did. I was actually doing color analysis for a BU women's basketball game, and I only had to do the open part on air, and we pre-recorded it, and it was horrific. You will not find it anywhere on any of my demo reels. Hopefully it's been taken off the internet, but it's just you're yelling at the camera, your tone of voice. I feel like my voice back then, I felt like I was screaming, and I don't know what I was doing with my face. It was just it's amazing to see once you start getting those live reps how you progress so quickly. But it is also really funny, specifically in baseball, that the guys are right kind of next to you, and it is more of a quiet environment. When I'm doing hockey, nobody can hear me because it's loud in there. It's just a loud environment. You might be able to kind of hear me, but the players for the most part can't. And with baseball, especially, it's always my opening hits, which I feel are the most awkward because I'm on the field right as the pitcher is coming out of the bullpen. And usually he's walking past me right as I'm starting the hit, my opening hit, which is 90% of the time on the starting pitcher.
Right, you're probably talking about him as he's walking by. It's kind of awkward.
Yeah,
you
so
never want to talk behind someone's back. That's not what it is.
Yeah.
But you're like, here's everything you need to know about this guy.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be
He's
like,
right there.
I'll be like, Joe Smith. We don't have a Joe Smith on our team, so that's why I'm using this. Joe Smith is coming off a rough outing in Syracuse. And he's like walking right past me. So, yes, I totally relate to that. And I feel like the longer I have gone in this industry, just the less I have started to care about those things. But baseball especially is funny because sometimes the guys will throw like sunflower seeds at you. They'll try to distract you, but it makes you tougher. It builds character.
Has that happened this season to you with sunflower seeds or anything else?
Yes, definitely. Well, actually, I can remember last year I actually got hit in the head pretty hard by a piece of gum.
I was expecting a baseball, a piece of gum. Piece of gum is probably worse for a girl. In your hair? Did it get stuck in your hair?
Well, it was wrapped up, but they were trying to, throw it at the guy that was I was interviewing, but it hit my head pretty hard, and you could hear it on the microphone. I was okay, but yeah, I've definitely gotten sunflower seeds a few times, and it doesn't rattle me anymore. But when I started, it was the kind of thing that probably would have made me skip a beat for sure.
That's good. Well, you know what? Sometimes those moments can be fun, and that's what you see clipped on TikTok and Instagram Reels. So hopefully something safer happens to you.
Right. Yeah, and I think one thing with baseball too that happens all the time is the Gatorade baths, and I've started to really enjoy those and kind of embrace those, and you kind of learn the skill of keeping the Gatorade bath in your side eye, kind of thing. Is it coming?
The peripheral
vision. Peripheral vision, because if a guy is going to get the Gatorade bath, he has a really good game. So you're always on your toes for that. Well, we'll have more time to talk about different media chaos later on, but there was so much Olympic talk this past week. So many different Olympic trials, but I think the one that probably we were both most excited about was the women's gymnastics trials. Now, I know I've been watching women's gymnastics for such a long time. It was probably one of the first sports that I remember being really engaged in as a kid, and it was specifically the Olympics. But I just feel like women's gymnastics isn't necessarily even having such a moment, because it doesn't feel like it's a moment anymore. It feels like this is something that is consistent every single year, whether or not it's an Olympic year or not, because you see everything that's going on with college gymnastics, and that's getting attention every single year now as well. And I just think that social media has done so much for that sport. So anyways, if you missed it, on Sunday, and a new Olympic team was named, 5 athletes. So, of course, Simone Biles was named to the team. She won the all-around at the trials, so she got the automatic Olympic team berth. But she also became the oldest woman to be named to the team. She's 27. She became the oldest woman to be named to the team since the 1950s, I believe, which is amazing.
Crazy. And 27 is not old, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
When I get to 27, I hope no one's calling me old.
Yeah, no. But
especially if I'm still a professional athlete.
Definitely. But the other women that were named as well, Jordan Childs, 23 years old, Suni Lee, 21 years old, Jade Carey, 24 years old, and Hesley Rivera, 16. Now, this really stuck out to me because I remember when I was first started to watch gymnastics, all of the girls, they were girls. They were actually girls. They were 16 years old. And if there was a girl that was 17 or 18, it was man, she's older. She's older on the team. Is she going to be able to make this team?
There was such a negative connotation with her body. Is she going to make it? I feel like they would emphasize any little ankle tape that was extra. But even Simone Biles talked about that. So I think a reporter asked her, how are you taking care of your body now compared to in the past? And she said, it's mental recovery. It's all the physical recovery. I need extra treatment, which is a very real thing. So I think there's both sides of it, right? It is real. When you get older, recovery is harder. But at the same time, we used to be talking about 17-year-olds. Oh my gosh, can you believe they're still doing gymnastics? And then to see what Simone has done at her age, it's amazing.
Completely. And I remember thinking too, just watching these women, the fact that they all compete competed in college gymnastics, at least 3 of them, and Jordan Chiles, Suni Lee, and Jade Carey. They were all college gymnasts. And that used to not be a thing. Like, it used to be if you went to college go do college gymnastics, that was the end of your gymnastics career. And part of that was a lot of women chose not to pursue college gymnastics because they would have to give up their amateur status, and that's obviously not the case anymore. But more importantly, it's like, I think college gymnastics used to be thought of as just a place where you can go and have fun, and it wasn't really taken seriously. But I think just this tone around gymnastics has become so much more like, this is supposed to be a fun place. This is supposed to be a supportive environment. And I think college gymnastics has been a big part of that. But also the fact that they were all able to come back and compete again at this elite level is really impressive. Because I remember the last Olympics in 2021, it was Michaela Skinner. She was competing for Utah for a couple of years, the University of Utah. And it was like, is she going to be able to, make a comeback in time for the Olympics to prove that she can still make the team? And she did. And now this year you see 3 athletes doing it. So I just think that the sport is moving in such a positive direction. And I know that we were both struck, too, by the beginning of Simone Biles' floor routine, right? What did you think of the music she chose?
Loved it. Anytime we can get Taylor in there, it's a good day. And to see Taylor's reaction, too, to Simone's song choice, I think it was Ready For It.
Yes.
That song. I don't remember her exact quote, but I think Taylor was like, girl, I'm not ready for it, but she is. And I think that's just cool to see. Like you said, there's so much hype and so much excitement around gymnastics right now. And even for social media to be able to pull in these 2 female superstars, it is really cool. And Simone even talked about it on a recent, I think it was her press conference interview after the trial. She was like, to see what Taylor has done for young women, well, it's also like, well, Simone, look what you've done for young women. So I think the 2 star power females shouting each other out is so cool. Completely.
And also just thinking, too, like, about the maturity that a lot of the women have on this year's team. We're talking about how this is, the oldest team in women's gymnastics history, just on average. Like, gymnastics is such a mental sport. Like, there's so much mental toughness that needs to go into it. And I know we were talking earlier just about the physical toll that it can take on your body, but I think having some of these more mature athletes who are ready for these really big moments, and, like, there's a lot of weight on your shoulders when you're on the women's gymnastics team because it's one of the most popular sports at the Olympics, I think. I think it's one that everybody tunes into is women's gymnastics. And having that kind of weight on you as a 16-year-old, I'm sure is really challenging. But I think all of these women, like the 4 older women that are on this team, have all been through it before. They were all on last year's gymnastics team, or the 2021 gymnastics team. So they've been through it, and I'm really excited. I remember watching some press conferences. I know you watched a lot of the press conferences too, but I believe it was Suni Lee said, no, we want gold this year. And I remember last year they won the silver medal, which was awesome. But obviously these are competitive women. They want to go back and they want to win gold. So yeah, I'm really excited for them.
They're going for their redemption tour, I think, individually and as a group, right? And that's what's cool about this group kind of being the same, is that they have that bond. They've been through those things, and so they can have those harder conversations, checking in on each other. How are you doing? Where can I help you to really get that gold? And something you mentioned too, even with the age, right? These are older gymnasts compared to in the past, but then we have 16 Rivera, right? And so it's cool to just watch that go down, because you can imagine the wisdom and the guidance that she's getting from her teammates. I think Simone even asked her, can you drive yet? Do you have your driver's license? She was like, technically, yes. And I don't know what the technically was. If I had to guess, it'd be because she's so busy training, she doesn't get her driver's hours in. It's probably what's going on. But just to see that, and for us to be able to watch her career unfold in front of us, is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I actually remember watching this video earlier this week it was Jordan Childs teaching her how to move her shoulders in a way. She's like, and I shouldn't be demonstrating. I really should not be demonstrating in gymnastics right now. But she was kind of teaching her how to use her shoulders to make her arms move. And it was really nice to see that teaching moment between a lot of the athletes, which was just really sweet. But I think just in speaking of the positivity, I know that Alicia Sacramone and Chelsea Memel they were both on the Olympic team back in 2008. They won the silver medal, and they were now assigned to kind of be the team leaders for USA women's gymnastics. And I watched a press conference of them yesterday, and they were talking about all the changes that they've made to U.S. gymnastics in the past couple of years and what it's been like and the challenges of naming this Olympic team, especially for two athletes that have been on that other side of it. And I think for all of those athletes that weren't able to make the team, they were able to make some really positive changes. I know Alicia was saying that they actually had mental health experts on site this time, so they had people there for all of the girls and women that didn't make the team. They had somebody to talk to. I know they had a therapy dog, Beacon,
Yes.
which we both loved. I know I would have probably loved to have had a therapy dog at some of my competitions in college and high school. What was your reaction to the therapy dog?
That was the cutest dog. And they had him in a tracksuit. Like, I was like, how do you get that on the dog, first of all? But no, I thought that was awesome. And I never had a dog come to my lacrosse games, so I don't know the impact that would have had, but I can imagine the dopamine and the calmness that the dog could bring, Beacon could bring. But you went to Stanford, very rigorous academically. I don't know if they had dogs there during exam week at BC. They brought dogs in during exam week, even into our athletic facility, and I know that just made us happier. Did that ever happen?
Yes, it did. We also had therapy dogs during exam week. I have to admit, I never engaged with the dogs during therapy week, but I always enjoyed like biking past the quad and just seeing them there, knowing they were there.
You were too busy. You're like, I gotta go. That might help you, but I gotta go.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I think just the fact of like knowing there's a therapy dog in the building is enough therapy for me.
Right.
But seeing some of the interactions that some of the athletes were having with the dog was so sweet. And I know he was like playing around on the floor for a while, and yeah, so really cute. One thing that we also wanted to talk about was the hair and the nails. I was never really mastered a hairstyle when I was in college for my sport. And looking back, it's something that I wish I had done because it's
a skill, okay? It's a skill. We're not saying that lightly because I didn't master a hairstyle either. With lacrosse, I wish I did.
Because I love looking at athletes that have like these sweet braids in their hair, and I'm just like, man, like that looks so cool. Like I wish I could go, because at the time you're so busy and you're like, I really just like I can't be focusing on my hair right now. Like I need to be able to make this time on my 2K or whatever it is. So it often the hair gets pushed to the side, but I always am just in admiration of these gymnasts who are like flipping through the air and their hair is like glued to their head.
Perfectly intact, the bun, and it's not like it's sitting on the top, like that thing is massive. Some of those girls have high ponytails, high buns, they got bows, sparkles, and they look perfectly intact the whole time. So I would love to talk to a gymnast one day and just say, can you show me your hair and makeup routine? How does it stay? How do you do it? Because they look awesome all the time.
I think that can be a future Respect Her Game guest.
Yes, I respect your hair game.
Tutorial.
Respect her hair game, okay?
Sure.
We could do a whole hour segment on each one of these 5 women's updos.
Yeah, and like last thing I'll say on this, because I mean obviously the focus is on their athletic achievements, but I was looking at some of their nails. They had like their nails were beautiful, and like they were longer, like actually done gel nails, and I was like, man, like you're doing these amazing bar routines and like your nails still look like that. I was so impressed. So
well, you can imagine that's the front, but the back is all calloused up, tough, strong. They'd probably shake our hand. We'd be like, whoa, and we are both former athletes ourselves, so I can imagine how strong those women are.
No, definitely. Now there were other Olympic news happened this past week as well. Alex Morgan was left off the U.S. women's soccer team. Now, we're not going to get too much into the technicalities of why. I will give a quick summary. I went and did a little bit of research as to why she was left off. And I actually read an ESPN article that explained it pretty well. But essentially, she didn't have a great World Cup last year. And then additionally, she plays a specific position. She just plays striker. And the new coach for the U.S. women's soccer team, Emma Hayes, decided to go with players that had more versatility because the U.S. women's soccer team at the Olympics, you can only bring 18 players. 2 of those are goalies, so you only have 16 roster spots left. So to me, it would make sense that you would want more versatility, but we're not going to get too much into those specifics why. I want to talk more about Alex Morgan and just everything that she's meant to women's sports, because for me personally, I think she was probably one of the first female athletes whose name I knew, and she's made such an impact just on, not even on the game of soccer, just on women's sports in general. And I mean, she'll be missed from the team just because of the type of person and what she symbolizes for U.S. women's sports, but yeah, I think we just want to take a moment to kind of honor her for sure.
Definitely. And she showed so much class and so much maturity with her response. I think she tweeted out her response. And I saw that breaking news headline, Alex Morgan will not be on this Olympic team. And immediately I was like, oh my gosh, what is she going to say? Like, how is she going to, she's probably freaking out, right? And she just said, like, I'm disappointed, but I'm excited to cheer these women on. And I thought, wow, like that was such a cool learning moment for me. And like you said, she was probably the first professional woman female athlete that I actually knew and looked up to. And I would give all the props to my dad on that. My dad played professional football for so many years, but he made it his goal to show my sister and I, hey, this might be the, male professional athlete world, and you might know these people and look up to these guys and these men, but here are all the women professional athletes that I want you to look up to. And I remember we were living in Nashville, Tennessee at the time, and the women's national soccer team, it was like Abby Wambach, Hope Solo, Alex Morgan at the time, and they were coming to practice at Lipscomb Academy right down the street from where my middle school was. And my dad calls the front office, he pulls us out of school, we go stand behind the bleachers of Lipscomb Academy to basically spy on their practice. But it was such a cool and starstruck moment. I ended up getting to actually meet Alex, but I just remember the aggressive approach that my dad took to have us watch their soccer games, read Alex's book, go spy on her at their practice. It was really cool and transformative for me knowing, okay, these are the other professional female athletes that are out there in the world. And I know my sister and I were in the backyard trying to do headers like Abby Wambach all the time. But I think, Alex is just that key person who, when I think back about my childhood and even now, when I think of a female athlete, I think of pink pre-wrap Alex Morgan.
I love that, pink pre-wrap Alex Morgan. That actually brings me back when I was in college. I used to always do all my lifts with this pink Under Armour headband. It wasn't pre-wrap, but it was pink, and I always did that because it made me think of Alex Morgan, and I just thought she was so cool. I wanted to be like her. But even still, I know that she's one of the older women now playing soccer in the U.S., but I babysit in my free time, and one of the girls that I babysit, she's 7 years old, and her favorite player, you ask her who her favorite athlete is, she says Alex Morgan. She has 3 or 4 Alex Morgan jerseys. She's obsessed with Alex Morgan. And I think it kind of just goes to show that she really kind of has transcended age and everything like that. I remember even back when I was in high school, the boys were talking about Alex Morgan. She was just so cool. But I think also what this represents too is sort of a changing of the guard in U.S. women's soccer, because just in the past year, you've seen Megan Rapinoe retire, you've seen Kelly O'Hara retire, and not saying that Alex Morgan is retiring, but she's obviously not on this team. And it's just interesting to see those names who have meant so much to women's sports and honestly equality in the U.S. Mm-hmm. It's kind of it makes you stop and think and reflect on everything that they've done for sure.
Mm-hmm. New era, and I think that's what's exactly true, is that we're all going to hold those women in such great places in our minds. At the same time, okay, whatever it takes to win. We want to see the U.S. on top. We want to see gold, and we'll get on the train.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you have to understand when these people are naming the U.S. Olympic teams, they're doing it because they want to put the best team out there to win. That's the same case with basketball. It's the same case with gymnastics. They're not looking for who's going to make the best NBC promotional ads. It's who's going to win. And at the end of the day, I think that's what even Alex Morgan wants. She obviously wants to be on the team, but she wants the best team, I would assume, to go and win in Paris. So anyways, and one thing that I wanted to add, a note that I actually saw, just kind of to send us off on this Alex Morgan note, that she, in the CONCACAF World Cup or World Championship in 2022, the U.S. beat Canada 1-0, and they needed this win this was the win that they used to qualify for the Olympic Games, and it was Alex Morgan's goal that was the one goal in that game. So even if she's not on the team there this year in Paris, she's definitely still made an impact. So anyways, that's
awesome. I would love to know what she's going to text some of those women before the first game. I would love to be in those group chats.
Yeah, I bet she will text them. I bet she will give them some good luck texts for sure. I'm curious, what would you want to receive from Alex Morgan? Like, what text would you want to get from Yvette?
Man, I know that anything that Yvette says, especially a vet that you hold very highly, means so much. Even Charlotte North, who is is the greatest lacrosse player of all time in women's lacrosse, she was texting our team this past season before championship games, but even before regular games. And just to know that our alumni are watching the games, that meant so much to us. And whether it's a text or just showing up in the crowd, I can remember looking up during my senior day and seeing the girls who came before me from even that last year before me and 5 years before me, and just having this like warmth about you, and it gets you fired up. Like if that doesn't get you fired up, you should not be playing a sport. So I can imagine anything. If Alex Morgan texted them an emoji, that would get me fired up.
An emoji, I bet. And that actually brings me back. I remember there was a girl who was on my team in college who I really looked up to, Christine Cavallo, who was one of the best lightweight rowers in the world. And I remember the year after she graduated, I was a senior and I was racing in a double. And I remember she came up to me afterwards and I was a walk-on to the team. So like, for the first little bit while you're on the team, you're just trying to like stay low profile and just like make it through. But I remember she came up to me after that race and was just like, no, I mean, like I thought that was an awesome race. Like you girls were in it. Anything that she told me, I really took to heart.
Right. And that's so long ago and you're still thinking about that, right? Like, sure. I think that's the cool thing is that if you didn't know anything about Alex Morgan, you never met her before, you never, watched her play, you saw how she responded via Twitter, right? Or X, sorry. You saw how she responded and okay, I can bet you that she's going to send an encouraging text or an encouraging call before the Olympics.
Yeah. Okay, well, there was one other Olympic trials that certainly caught our attention. It was the track trials, which took place in Eugene, Oregon this past weekend as well. And specifically, there was one race that stood out to both of us. It was the women's 10K. I watched it the next morning on social media, but you told me that you watched it live. So how would you describe those final 2 laps?
I was watching it live, and I'm actually glad that I watched it after I'd already worked out because it made me feel a little bit better. Okay, I've already done something semi-hard today like these women have, but so inspirational just in the effort that it takes to do that kind of a race. I think it took them like 31 minutes, right? Yep. But I was in my living room. I was sitting next to my dad, and my mom was in the kitchen. She was watching on a separate TV, and we're all screaming in different spots of the house. None of us know any of these 3 top women in this race, right? But like the emotion and the like borderline tears that we had watching these women compete and just put it all out there was crazy. My mom was screaming from the kitchen. We were screaming. We really didn't know, even on that last 100, you didn't know who was going to win. And so I think that was the most exciting part. But I watched it live. I watched it on TikTok like you the day after. I watched it on Instagram Reels. Then I watched it again on YouTube just to go over that entire experience. And the energy from that stadium, everyone was standing up. I felt like every time I watched it on all the different platforms, I still felt like I was in the room at that race. So absolutely incredible. And just to see those women do such a hard thing, it's crazy.
So I watched this the next morning. Of course, first thing I did was pick up my phone and like jolt myself with blue light, open Instagram, and there's this reel of the 10K trials. And I'm like, okay, like, and actually one of the women that was in it, Parker Valby, she's been on my Instagram timeline this entire year because she set so many records in the NCAA.
And because, right, she's beautiful, obviously, number one.
That's a big part of it.
And I think what she was going viral, I was trying to figure this because she was going viral on TikTok like last week or the last 2 weeks. And when she's running, she's kind of like looking around like this, like doesn't even seem fazed by the fact that she's running so fast or that she's going so far. And I think that's what people were talking about is, does this girl know what she's doing right now? She looks like she's looking up in the crowd. She's, smiling a little bit. So I think that's part of the reason too why we were seeing her, obviously because of the records and her success, but also her demeanor.
Yes.
And even crossing the finish line. Yeah, great race. Like,
she's like giving out hugs. Like all three of them are giving out hugs.
I would be on the ground, passed out. I would not be like coherent. It would be bad.
No, not at all. But so I opened this video and like you're watching it. You're watching the race transpire. And I'm like, okay, somebody had to like overtake someone in the last second, because I feel like that's always what happens in these track videos. I was wrong. People were these women were overtaking each other. It seemed like every 10 seconds. Like, it's like someone would pass someone. And it was the top three. It was Wayne Colati, Parker Valby, and Carissa Schweitzer were the top three women. And they just, like, the lead changes in the last 2 laps were crazy. And it was like one woman would, what they call in track, it's called a kick. So one woman would kick, which is basically like the sprint to the finish, and then another woman would, and then it was like the one that just sprinted and you thought she would probably be gassed start sprinting again, and you're like, oh my God.
And all that's while that's all happening, they're lapping the other girls. I remember seeing that was almost more. I was almost more in awe of that than the multiple, kicks and runs and different leads that they were having. I was like, oh my gosh, imagine being that girl running probably a 4-minute mile, 4 or 5 minute mile, and still getting lapped. I was like, that just shows you the level that these women are competing at such a young age and how fast they're running. I mean, for you to be lapping women who no one in this vicinity could potentially even keep up with, it's insane.
I couldn't imagine being that runner that got lapped, not just because it's like, oh, you got lapped, but it's like, you still have to run.
Yeah. Okay, that's a huge part of it. Oh, and I got to do another one of these. They're already done before. That was part of my strategy for college lacrosse and conditioning was, okay, the faster I run this, the faster I'm done, the faster it's over. So I can imagine that being part of the strategy.
Yeah, no. And I think, too, you could just see the emotion on these women's faces. The only automatic, I think, lock in the track trials is very confusing. I was reading about it yesterday, trying to figure out how the Olympic qualification works. And the woman that finished first, Wayne Colati, she definitely qualifies for the Olympics. The other two, because they finished where they did, will probably have high enough world rankings that they still get into the Olympics. But they needed to perform the way that they did in order to reach that. But it was kind of crazy, too. I was reading about Parker Valby, and I guess she almost didn't even run the 10K because she had a bad 5K. Like, the day or two prior, she finished 4th in the 5K, and she, like, needed to finish top 3. And she almost was like, yeah, I wasn't going to do it. But she's like, I mentally regrouped and figured, give it a go anyways. And it's just crazy to see how that can, like, turn out for somebody.
Yeah. Well, if that's her, give it a go. Girl, teach me how to run because that's pretty impressive.
There was also a really, I think, important story that I want to tell, too, about these Olympic track trials and specifically this race, because sometimes it can always be really fun to watch these races and, like, the race itself is a story, but also a lot of these athletes have their own stories. And I was reading about Wayne Colati, who won it, and she is 27 years old, but 10 years ago, she decided to seek asylum in the U.S. She was originally born in Eritrea, which is a very small country in East Africa, and it's known for being one of the more oppressive countries in the world. And when she was 17, she was representing Eritrea in the Youth World Championship event, actually in Eugene, Oregon, at the Hayward track where they were competing for the trials. And she decided when she got on the plane to go to the U.S., she decided that she was going to miss her flight home. She was 17 years old. She made this decision that she was going to seek asylum in the U.S. And I can only imagine what kind of decision that would be like for a 17-year-old to go through. She ended up getting a track scholarship to University of New Mexico. She won the NCAA cross-country championships, I think in 2019, her senior year. And then 3 years ago, she finally was able to get U.S. citizenship. So now she's able to represent the U.S. in the Olympics. But she said that, obviously the path to U.S. citizenship is very challenging. And she said that, there were other countries that it might have been easier to get citizenship in, but she said she wanted to run for the U.S. And if she wasn't going to run for the U.S., she didn't want to run at all.
Wow.
But she also said that, sometimes running at that track was so emotional for her, and she wouldn't have great races there because it would bring back all of those memories of when she decided to leave her family. But she said she was able to kind of put that behind her and was able to obviously have an amazing race. But I couldn't believe it. She said that 2 years ago was the first time she was able to actually see her mom again.
Oh my goodness.
They could barely talk over the phone because, I think the service in a country like that isn't great, or it's really expensive to call. And I can only imagine kind of how challenging that would be for her. But it's nice to see, I don't know if it's nice to see a moment like that come full circle because you wish it never had to happen anyways, but it's definitely emotional for sure. And I just wanted to make sure we shared her story because it's very important.
Yeah, and it even gives you so much insight into when they're hustling so hard and you see that raw emotion, whether you're still racing or you cross the finish line, there's so much more behind it and there's so much more that goes into it. And just to see her pride for the United States, that's who you want to root for. You want to root for people who are so proud to wear the U.S. emblem on their chest. And I think that's something that I get excited about, is knowing those stories and knowing where people are coming from headed into the Olympics.
Yeah, no, definitely. So there's going to be a lot more Olympics talk to come on this show. Obviously, the Olympics hasn't even started yet, and we already just had spoke for over 35 minutes on Olympics. So we've got lots more to come on Olympics in future episodes. But one segment that we wanted to potentially introduce, we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, the media mayhem moment. I know I have a couple, so I can start with mine. I don't know if you have one yet, but I'll start with a media mayhem moment that happened to me a few weeks ago. And just for a description on the segment, this is just chaos that happens in sports reporting because nothing goes as it seems. And there's always chaos happening behind the scenes, and then you get on camera and you're like, everything's great.
Right.
Everything's perfect.
This
is exactly what I planned. So I was doing a Woo Sox game, and on Fridays after a win, I do an interview that goes over all of the ballpark speakers. So I need a different microphone for that. And it was also really hot this day. It was probably 90 degrees or something. So I had
We love Boston summers.
Yes, yes. And the Woo Sox were up. They were up 5 or 6 runs or something. It was okay, they're locked to win this game. It's the 8th inning. Let's go. I should have known better. AAA baseball is chaos. Anyways, So I go up to the control room to get the ballpark mic, and I have my other mic with me. I have 2 microphones because there's the broadcast mic and the ballpark mic. I start walking down to the field. I'm sitting in the tunnel, just sitting in the shade, and then I'm sitting on a chair, and I have my microphones kind of propped up on the railing. And then the inning ends and they're still up 5 runs. I'm okay, well, I'm going to go back to the photo pit to watch this final inning and watch the rest of the game, write my post-game question. So I walk over to the photo pit and I realize I don't have any of my microphones. I don't have the in-park mic, I don't have the ballpark mic, and at the time, I know where I set it now, I set it on that railing, but I had no idea where I set these microphones. I'm tearing apart the photo pit. I'm asking everyone, where did I put my microphones? Is it in my bag? Where did it go? And the microphone is what I use to talk to the control room. And so I'm texting the control room, I'm so sorry, I don't have the microphone. And they thought I was talking about the ballpark mic. They're okay, well, we can just do a broadcast, a broadcast interview if you need it. And I was I don't even have that. I don't have anything. And this is the one thing as a sideline reporter.
You gotta talk loud.
This is the one thing as a sideline reporter, don't go anywhere without your microphone because it's paralyzing when you don't have it essentially. So I'm sitting in the photo pit panicking. Where could I have left this microphone? I realized I'm oh my gosh, it's probably sitting on the stairwell where I was sitting in the shade. Hopefully it's there. And there's 1 out left in the inning. And unfortunately, this is when our pitcher starts to struggle. 1 out left in the inning. I think we're leading by like 4 runs at this point. And pitcher starts to struggle. There's a mound visit. And normally, like, as a reporter, like, I don't walk down. There's only one gate to get onto the field. And it's behind home plate. So I have to walk down the first base line. And normally I would not do that during a pitching change or, like, unless it's the end of an inning. But the producer texted me, just like, run. So I sprinted.
Like just run, all caps.
Run,
like,
just like run, like run.
I think
all
if
caps.
I ever saw that text, I would lose my mind.
He just goes, run, all caps, middle of the game. I don't know if it was all caps or not, but it was just like run. And so I like
we need a screenshot of that text stream later. I want to see that.
I sprint out of the photo pit, like sprinting down the first baseline. It was so embarrassing. Like, you have to run in front of the dugout. Like, it's not what you want to do.
This is what I'm saying. Being in front of the dugout, I've only done it once, but it was nerve-wracking whether you're talking about them or just walking by. Yeah,
so I'm sprinting down the first baseline. It all turned out fine. Like, I, got into the tunnel. The microphones were there. I'm like, perfect. I had my post-game questions all ready to go. And I was like, okay, great. Like, I texted them. I got the microphones ready to go. I had, great post-game questions dialed up. And then they blow the lead. And it was all for nothing. So there was no post-game interview anyways. But it just goes to show that you have to be prepared for anything. And nothing is as it seems. And never forget your microphone behind.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, I would never imagine that would be something, but it is. And you know what? Sometimes I feel like these moments happen and then, nothing ended up happening, but it's still a great memory to look back on and whew.
Yes,
we're
it
good.
is. And you know what? Somebody, one of the stadium workers caught me in one of the ballpark hallways after the game. And he's like, you were an athlete, weren't you? I was like, I was. He was like, I saw you running down that first baseline. I was like, whoa, she's fast.
That is
so that
awesome.
made me feel good.
Oh my goodness.
Anyways, okay, we're about to get the wrap here, but we need to talk about our wins of the week, which is a new segment that's on this show. I can start with mine. My win of the week was from the NHL draft. But the 4th overall pick, Caden Lindstrom, he was drafted by the Blue Jackets. He gave a shout out to his single mom who raised him and his 3 sisters, and just said that, he said that he hugged her as soon as that pick was announced, and he said he never wanted to let go because she is his superhero, and he just, wanted to say everything that she's done for him and his siblings, and I think that's just one of the moms that is so important when it comes to hockey or any sport. Like, there would be no athletes without moms, mm-hmm. And even though the NHL is obviously a men's league, there's so many women that make that sport go. So, that's my win of the week. Shout out to Caden and his family.
That's awesome. So special, too, for him to share that moment with her.
Yeah.
Especially all the bright lights, all the cameras are on him, and that's who he's pointing to. It's awesome.
Definitely.
Well, my win of the week, Monet Nichols in this Olympic trial long jump, Texas Tech long jumper, okay? It was her final jump to make the Olympic team, and she goes up there. She has to get, I think she had to get like exactly 6.86 meters, and she goes up, jumps, arms flailing, the whole thing, lands, and she does, it's like there's like 8 seconds between seeing the score and just kind of staying there. So she's shuffling like down the track. She's kind of pacing. Her hands are up like this. And we didn't actually see on the screen what the score was, but just by her reaction, she hit exactly 6.86 meters to get her 3rd place to send her to the Olympics. And just watching her reaction, I mean, she was sprinting down the track, arms going everywhere. She ended up falling to her knees and crying. But that was just, I don't know her. That was the first time I had ever watched her compete, but to see her excitement and raw emotion and just to get that on her last try, so cool.
No, that's awesome. I think just the emotion on these athletes' faces when you see that they're going to be making it to the Olympics, it just shows how much it does mean to represent the U.S. And I've heard a couple of people over the past few years saying, oh, does the Olympics mean as much as it used to? It 100% does. And you can see it in all of these women's faces that we talked about here today. And everything that it means to represent the USA or whichever country you're representing in the Olympics. Well, AB, it was so good to have this conversation with you today. I had so much fun.
So much fun. I'm learning from you all the time, so I'm glad we got to hear some more Media Mayhem moments and excited to follow these athletes along in the Olympics to come.
Well, I'm learning from you too. So it's mutual. You can always learn from everyone in the career, in the field, no matter age or experience. Everybody has a story to share. So thank you so much for watching this episode of Respect Her Game. We'll be back next week.